Fire Force. Let's go Fire Force.
Okay, so it was good, but I definitely I guess it kind of like lacked the I wouldn't say pacing. It wasn't the pacing that I like thought was missing. I guess there was just like the atmosphere of the episode was definitely way more like, drab and foreboding. But then at the same time, I guess it's because I don't really know these characters that well and those stakes. I guess my interest has kind of waned a lot. I'm just assuming that because I did not or because we don't know that much about those characters and we're being introduced to them right now, maybe that's why I was just less engaged for this episode. But I really did like some of the art elements. The Dr. Pepper can. I don't know if that stood out to me a lot, but the Dr. Pepper can in the puddle with the reflection of the Church of Souls
Yeah, that
like
was cool.
sign, I was like, oh, this is a really cool fucking shot. Like, what is this? And then I did enjoy the I guess like the overall maybe the theme of the episode was like, what is everyone's goal or what is everyone's motivation? That's what I got because and then they were talking about like the dark heroes and what is everyone's means to an end. Like, this is how you do it and I'm expecting it to go wrong because of these reasons, so this is how I'm gonna do it because we all are searching for the same thing, but you are relegated to these rules. I don't have any rules, so now it's my turn.
Yeah, I felt like the episode was super moody, just in initial presentation, and it kind of had to be. The
Mm.
last few episodes were this adventure out in a part of the world that had not been explored, at least in the terms of the show. And so the characters were sort of always being introduced to new things and uncovering new stuff. But there's consequences, I think, for a lot of what they found.
Yeah.
And coming
Like the
back,
3 years shit. I was like, oh, they're
right,
not doing
right. Like
shit.
one of the things that what Obi said goes all the way back to episode 7 or 8 when he's sitting in the office with you kind of meet like the upper brass of the
Mm-hmm.
Fire Force that kind of set them on this journey to figure out what the f is going on, and that they did their job, they got this info, and then Obi says, "Well, it's gonna be like 3 years before it comes out," which it's kind of like a throwaway line because obviously we know that the plot is gonna progress in
Oh
real
yeah.
time, but it calls back to the nature of like the stagnation of their own um, upper brass. It also means that like now there's a conflict between the members
The Fire
of the
Force.
of the of, yeah, of the eighth squad and everybody else, because so they lay out like basically three directions. The first conflict is now the eighth is going to be at odds with its own management because obviously they know the truth. They think bad stuff's going to happen. Shinra has this line where he says, "Okay, well, it's going to be 3 years, but what happens with all the stuff the White Clads are doing right now? Like you're trying to cover up
Yeah.
this information or massage this information so that people don't freak out initially, but we got it. There's like some bad juju going down. So, and yet he doesn't get an answer for that. So that's a collision course right away where they're definitely going to have to take some action that's going to put them at odds with their own allies, their leadership, right? Because the eighth is working with the top brass of the Fire Force to kind of get to the bottom of the other squads and maybe even the Holy Soul Temple being up to no good. That's one conflict. Second conflict is the fact that the church, now they know and everyone agrees that the church has been lying. And if the church is lying and the church has been instrumental in constructing the society that they live in and the technology and everything else, especially the whole idea that the Amaterasu plants require a living sacrifice with an Adola burst to power them up, that
Mm-hmm.
means that their entire society is resting on not only a foundation of lies but also of exploitation in like a gross kind of way. I think Benny Maru has that line when he's standing on the roof with Joker and he says, "I always felt like the plants had like smelled like blood,"
Yeah.
and Joker's like, "Oh, you got a good nose." And I think that the show didn't quite highlight enough in season 1 exactly what made is Benimaru the second? Is that theirs? I forget the number, but the Asakusa Fire Brigade. Like,
Uh-huh.
they didn't exactly lay out, as well as the manga did, what exactly is going on in Asakusa. Like, Asakusa is an area that's, like, completely rejected, or at least as much as they can, the new culture of the Empire. So,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily use the power from the Amaterasu planet. They are definitely at odds with the government, and they're at odds even with the other fire forces because they're sort of like grandfathered into the fire force to like maintain order, but they don't even consider themselves really a part of things. You know, they had their own way of doing stuff, and then the fire force came along and was like, "All right, could you please join us so that we don't wind up fighting a civil war?" And they're like, "Yeah, cool, we'll do that, but just don't get in our way because we're doing our own. We're handling stuff inside our own borders." So that comes up again in this episode because that's how Benimaru is more susceptible or more interested in Joker's offer to go fuck around at the Holy Soul Temple. And I had forgotten that like they just go in the front door.
Yeah, I actually thought it was kind of weird though, because it seemed like Benimaru came out of nowhere, and why like the reasoning behind Joker asking Benimaru, I kind of was just like, what? Like, why is he?
Yeah, it makes more sense
Why?
if you can remember exactly what they had said about Benimaru and the Proto Nationalists back in season 1. They just don't recap any of it, so you just see them together and you're like, oh, huh. I thought this guy was a bad guy. But
Which
I don't want to give
I
anything
don't
away for
get the.
what's going to come up for the rest of the season. The last thing I want to say, the third sort of conflict is the Hajiba Industries, which was responsible for, or at least ostensibly responsible for, all the technology that is built on top of Amaterasu. And you get the multiple characters saying the same idea that, like, I don't think I can trust society. The only thing I can trust is the truth. And so the search for the truth is pushing people to do things that, you know, more and more are like drawing outside the lines. Because remember, Shinra's whole ideology is that he's gonna be this hero that saves everybody, which is a very like generic point of view. But up until now, being a hero has meant, you know, being a member of the Fire
The
Force,
Fire
which is like
Force.
public order, right?
Yeah.
And then we have Joker, who now we're getting more of his ideology, where he seems like he's the reverse of Shinra, right? Because he also believes in being a hero, but he doesn't think that the rules of society allow for the truth to be gotten to with, you know, by coloring inside the
Traditional
lines.
message.
So where Shinra's all the way inside, Joker's all the way on the outside. But then now he's starting to work with like other people and Benimaru and everything else. So he's actually more, you know, coming. They're both coming back to a center. And I just think that those characters are getting more time, and it's really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, so I enjoyed the episode. Also, there was some really good like still shots, like when what's the doctor's name?
Licht?
Yeah, like when he's like walking through the city at night. It's like I felt like I wanted to point out the sound design because
Oh,
this
I
is
was
something
gonna say that too.
Yeah,
Like
so this is a
the
pet peeve of mine,
keyboard.
but they did a good job here. Is that rain sounds in movies, not just anime, but like capturing like the sound of water falling and like mix and having it like actually work is really hard. And I don't know who was responsible for like those rain segments when he's like outside, but they got some really good like Foley, because it sounded like real rain.
Yeah.
It seems like a silly thing to focus on, but I thought that was like it stuck out to me.
No,
He's walking around
I-
like whoever did this did a really good job.
I basically really liked the sound. It was when he basically was like going through the pie stuff and like
yeah.
the keyboard, and like it was focusing on his eyes, but all you could hear is just like the keyboard strikes, and I was just like, why is this so engaging? I was like, I don't know why, but like I'm really into this right now, even though he's not even like monologuing or saying anything yet.
Oh yeah, and I kind of nerd out for another minute. So for those who don't know, I'm also like a published researcher and a PhD. And one really cool thing was that when he was writing, like there's a scene where like he's in there and he's like, it's a flashback to 3 years ago, and he's writing about like human combustion. So he was writing. I don't know. Again, who this attention to detail. When he was like writing those segments out, I think he was typing in LaTeX, which is like a word processing software that you pretty much only see people in academic like publishing use. Like my father, who's a mathematician, used it all the time. I've used it for like writing papers and stuff. But it's like it's halfway between like writing in a text editor and then also like writing code. So I was like looking at him like,
Oh yeah, it looked like he was writing code.
Yeah, that's because like LaTeX. I won't get into the details of it, but I just like who thought, to like include him writing the outline essentially for his paper in LaTeX in this random anime, like it would have to be someone who knew something about like academic publishing, right? They did a little bit of research like to make that scene work because it could have just been like a flat like Word document, but there were a lot of things that were happening like when he typed in kana, and it was like, what do they call it, when you use a Japanese keyboard and you're typing in kana, Japanese keyboards look a lot like American keyboards. They don't really have like extra keys, but you have these different modes that you can switch. So like software wise, you can like convert characters, and in the show when he's typing it is doing some of the conversion there. I'm like, they used a reference for this. So like little things like that nobody will care about it. I already love the manga and I love the story, so I wouldn't have been like super bothered about how they did this particular scene. But the fact that they like took that attention to detail for such a throwaway thing that almost no one is going to appreciate, I think that's really cool.